We're going to get this show on the road. Happy Founders Day to all of you. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. First, to those of you who are audience members and took a little time out of your Sundays. I know that those can be busy times, but we wanted to find a time where manas from all over the country could participate. And I know how New York centric we can be sometimes, and I was really trying to be sensitive to that. So what we're going to do today is I have some questions that I have for each of the panelists. And I will be looking at the chat box to see if any of the audience members have questions, and I will go back and forth. But this is essentially a leadership panel in commemoration of Founders Day. So thank you again to all of our panelists who took some time out. I know that we're all leaders in our own right, but I know that there are also some women who are doing some amazing things in their professional lives. And I thought that it would be nice to have a sampling. We have someone in the technology field. We have someone in politics and consulting, education, healthcare, nonprofit. So we have a nice range of industries. And I'm hoping that we can do another one with another set of industries in March for Women's History Month. So we'll see how this one goes, and then we'll go there. So I am going to start with a question that's for all of our panelists. And I'll just say your name so you're not talking over each other. But essentially, how has being an SLU helped in your development? Have you had a formal position or role that you can relate to how you do your job or organize yourself? And we can start with Julissa.
Oh, no. So, you know what's interesting, that now that I am an executive director of a nonprofit in the Bay Area, I find myself in like SLU mode all the time. So, you know, putting together events last minute, or getting volunteers, or trying to persuade different organizations to partner up with us. That's how I see a lot of those skills play into my life.
And you're in the technology field, correct? If you can just share what you do.
Oh, so I'm Julissa Ramirez. I pledge Fall 6 inside chapter. And I am a technical program manager at Google. It's very technical background, mostly supply chain manufacturing engineering. And I'm also the executive director of a nonprofit called Listas in the Bay Area.
Okay. How about Alina Moran?
Hi, ladies. So I'm Alina Moran. I pledged Spring 91 at Brown University Delta chapter. For me, I think the biggest thing that I learned being part of the sorority is really time management. So as an undergrad, I studied engineering as my undergraduate degree, and trying to manage a small chapter and do programming and do all those things are really the skills that help me in my current job. I am a chief executive officer for a hospital in New York City. And so each and every day, I am using project management and time management skills to make sure that we're doing what we need to do at the hospital, but also thinking about what do we want to do in the community and what do we want to do in terms of serving our patients. So that's really what I've learned from the sorority.
Okay. Patricia?
Hi, Patricia Mota. I'm currently serving as president and CEO for the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement, a national nonprofit based out of Chicago, working to provide insight, access, and professional development to both aspiring and current Latino professionals across the country. And I pledged in spring 2006, so one of the founding members for the Alpha Eta chapter, Alpha Line at Indiana University. And I played two roles specifically, one as being president and obviously co-founder of the chapter, but also first regional director for the Midwest as well. In terms of the key things and development that I took away, one was the importance of also, you know, of confidence. I've been being able to connect with a lot of women who are doing, you know, successful things in their careers, Latinas, which wasn't very visible for me growing up as a first generation going into professional workforce and I think for me, I took that away as I got into my professional career, to really understanding the value of putting visible Latino professional role models in front of our young professionals and our students as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lily?
Hi, Liliana Pola McKenna. I pledged Spring 99, Delta chapter. So it's funny, I think for me, similar to what Julissa said when she opened up, I do feel like every day I'm pledging. And to be honest, I think that both like the insight into figuring out what do different people care about, and how do I as a lead, how am I able to like both tap into that and connect to that, to those values in a meaningful way, but also in a way that's going to advance the work that we're trying to get done. Like that's been, I would have never called that, but stepping into this role, that's probably the most important thing that I have to do every single day with, you know, staff members. I am CEO of Opportunities for a Better Tomorrow, and we're one of New York City's largest youth workforce organizations. And as I'm sure all of you know, nonprofits are really complicated. And so there's both the internal and then the external environment. So connecting to people's values is super important.
Thank you. And Alina Agusti?
Hi everyone, I'm Alina Agusti. I pledged Spring 2013 in Albany, new chapter. Right now, I actually just started a new position working in government affairs for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, covering state and federal issues. And before that, I was with a political consulting and communications firm as a senior associate there for 4 years. And I also consult on the side in public relations. So I have a few clients that I consult with on communications issues. And I'd say, you know, being a part of SLU and pledging, I'd say being resourceful and solution oriented. You know, I think when you're running a chapter and pledging, and even just, you know, being a part of a chapter after you graduate, you have to really find solutions to issues. You know, and the political world can be pretty cutthroat. So you learn pretty quickly that nobody cares about how you feel. You know, they care about winning or losing. So that, you know, putting my emotions aside and really being able to find solutions quickly, I think is what sets you apart from different people in the workplace. So that has been like a tremendous help for me in my career.
Okay, thank you so much. And I neglected to introduce myself. I'm Roseanne Santos. I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees. I'm a higher education professional. I've been in higher ed for 20 years and I work at John Jay College. So thank you all of you for that intro. That was a light ball question. I have some hardball ones.
No.
I was having a conversation with another higher ed individual in Hermana, and we wanted to formulate a question around this idea of the glass ceiling. But then when we got to talking, we were thinking to ourselves, well, higher ed is a lot of women, so maybe there isn't a glass ceiling there. And I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit to this idea of the glass ceiling. And I'm specifically interested, I'm interested in all of you, but in particular, Alina Moran and Julissa, because of the industries you're in. I think that stereotypically they might be white male industries. And I was wondering if you guys could speak a little bit to this concept of the glass ceiling.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So for me, it's, I work in an organization, thankfully, that because of our mission, we're really oriented to serving the underserved. And so in particular, we have a lot of people of color that are in kind of top positions. And so I feel I'm lucky in that regard, because when I look to other organizations and other health systems, I do feel that there is somewhat of a glass ceiling, because it is very hard for you to move up in the organization and become part of the C-suite if you don't necessarily have a sponsor that kind of moves you in that direction. And so even in my organization, there's 11 hospitals under our system, and there's only basically 2 out of the 11 are female. And luckily, both of us are women of color. So I consider myself lucky from that perspective because I have someone that I could bond with and I have someone that, we could have those discussions about. So I think it really is, and it's a great question from the perspective of which industry you're in. But I think definitely in healthcare, that in leadership positions, there tends to be a glass ceiling, except maybe in the nursing profession, which still continues to be very women dominated. But even then, you don't tend to see those female nurses moving up to kind of C-suite positions.
Okay, thank you. Julissa?
Oh, my turn. So it's no secret that there's not a lot of women or people of color in tech. When I was at Intel, which was about 6 months ago, was when I joined Google. I thought that there weren't a lot of Latinos or women. I was the only female, the only Latina in all of my groups that I was there. I was there for 6 years. And I was like, oh, when I go to Google, things are going to get better because, it's Google. Nope. First day there, I'm the only person in my floor that's of color. And I'm the only Latina on my team. To this day, I'm the only person of color other than, some of my Indian coworkers. So glass ceiling. And we do have a VP that's a Latina. Her name is Ana Corrales, the only Latina technical VP in our supply chain area. There's not a lot of people that look like me. And there's not a lot of women representation, period, I would say, in the higher ranks at Google or even at Intel. So I deal with glass ceilings every day. However, I let go of the idea that I have to see it to be it a long time ago. I think you kind of have to do that. We hear that so often, and it's to me, it's such a jaded message to give people, because then it's telling me or anyone or even younger girls that I have to aspire to be like someone else that has to look like me. But if there's no one that looked like me, then I shouldn't be there. So for me is I have to see myself be it. That's so yeah, there is.
So Julissa, if you can hear me, you froze. But we'll come back to you because I think I can give this question to Alina Agusti as well, because you're in the political realm. And I'm wondering how this concept of the glass ceiling manifests.
Yeah. It's the political realm is definitely an interesting industry because your personal life really meshes with your professional life. It's a very personal and intimate
Sorry, guys.
field. It's a very personal and intimate field. So it's very informal sometimes. I would say I definitely still see the glass ceiling, but what's been interesting is to see how white colleagues or people who are, running for campaigns or, higher ups, the people in the C-suite need women of color. They need women in higher positions, and they realize that. And so I've encountered a lot of people, even opportunities, and they have blatantly said, we want to give you this opportunity because you're a woman of color. So sometimes, I see it starting to work towards our advantage, but I think a lot of people are doing it for selfish reasons and not because it's the right thing to do, because they just like the optics of it. So yeah, that's the issue that I've seen.
So I get a lot of questions about how do we highlight this network that we have. So if you go to any kind of informal or formal tea, the hermanas are always talking about, we have this network, but it's kind of hard to access the network in some ways, unless you're someone like myself or Alina. We kind of have we have a lot of access to a lot of hermanas. So I want to start breaking that here and now. And this would go to Patricia and to Lily. What is a pitfall that young professionals often fall into when managing their careers early on? And Patricia, if you could start, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you. Two things. I would say one is in terms of the fear of not asking or negotiating deadlines, for example. I think many times if we're that young professional, we want to make sure that we're making a statement and that maybe it's that first job or you're early on in your career. You want to be able to complete, the projects and things like that. I've had several on my team that, I'm actively communicating this with, that I'd rather have you come to me and say, hey, I need to move back this deadline and have that conversation rather than it be delayed, right? I think that displays a lot more confidence from a young professional to be able to really advocate for yourself and prioritize. So really taking the time to do that. And then, the second thing I will say is taking time to not just network, but build strategic relationships within your organization. Earlier on in my first full-time job, I went to my cubicle. I make sure I was meeting all of the things that I needed to accomplish in order to be successful. And going day in and day out, working really hard, having good reviews and with my direct supervisor. And then had an opportunity to have an informal lunch with a group of my colleagues. And at the time, they looked at me, we're having a conversation, and they said, they're like, you're really, really nice and would like to continue to hang out with you. And I think what they were surprised that I was being so serious in my job without really taking the time to get to know others. And so making sure that young, professionals take the time to build, relationships that, yes, work and life kind of sometimes blend over, but you're there most of the time. And how are you making sure that you're taking the time to connect with others there? Because in the long run, you never know who's going to vouch for you for that next opportunity.
You already said your good night.
Hold on, I'm gonna mute that.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm hearing like a side voice.
Yeah.
Well, because people aren't muting, so I'm just muting people that aren't the panelists. So if you're on the call and you're not muted and you're not a panelist, please mute yourself because we can hear everything. So Lily, I know that you work in this non-for-profit, but you've also had experience with students from an education, secondary education. So in those experiences, what's your advice about young professionals managing careers?
Yeah, I actually what Patricia said really resonated. Those are two really important things to keep in mind. I do think the workplace has changed quite a bit, even from when I first entered the workforce. And so it's interesting now, because what we do is we prepare young people to for their first jobs ever. These are 17 and 24-year-olds, right? And so I think a couple of things. There's this really important balance between earning your stripes and also not allowing traditional structures or hierarchies to dictate the kind of opportunities that you go after, or the speed at which you see your professional trajectory moving. I think there's something to be said for putting the time in. When I started teaching, it was very much teacher union UFT world, and it's well, in 20 years you might be an assistant principal, and I was like, what? And so I do think that the world has changed a little bit, but I think that that's still really important. And to be honest, sometimes when our young people, I'll meet with them before they're going out on interviews, the perception of how quickly they can achieve things is a little off. So I think the balance between, making your mark and putting your time in, and at the same time sort of knowing your worth, and to Patricia's point about connecting authentically and deeply with the people that you work with in order to figure out where the opportunities might be that are a good next step for you.
Okay, I'm going to keep you, Lily, because I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about what kind of advice do you give these young people if and when they experience microaggressions?
Yeah. I don't know if it's micro.
Yeah.
You know, the young people that we serve at OBT, many of them are coming to us to get their high school diploma and get, you know, those foundational skills, what people call soft skills, but they're not soft about them. You know, a lot of it has to do with, and I'll be honest, this is where I have come to struggle. This idea that you have to flex and recognize sort of the work culture that you're stepping into without relinquishing sort of who you are. You know, I think when I was both in high school and in college, we talked a lot about code switching. It's not something actually that I frankly like espouse in the same way that I once did, because of the fact that that in itself is actually a microaggression. But the importance of really being able to read your environment, making decisions about what's a good, like how you even decide, is this job potentially a good fit for me? Am I a good fit for it? So a lot of it has to do with how a young person engages in that interview process, the kind of research that they're doing for the, you know, the organization, the company. You know, we talk a lot about, you know, benefits and sort of things that I myself wasn't thinking about when I was 20, 21 years old, but really beginning to introduce those topics to someone when they're entering the workforce. You know, what kind of policies do they have? Are they, you know, is this a company that espouses values on like racial equity? Like all of these different, I would say, categories that we want young people to be mindful of as they enter work.
Now, my microaggressions are not always a teaching moment. For example, I came to work with my curly hair a couple years ago, and one of my coworkers, she just ran to me and was like, "Oh my God, your hair is so cute," and touches it right there and just grabs my head. And I'm just like, "How did you do that? How did it get so curly?" And I'm just like, "Don't you ever touch my hair again." But it, you know, there's a lot of little things here and there. They're not used to seeing Caribbean Latinos in this area. There's a lot of Mexican, a lot of South American Latinos. So I'm not only different from a, you know, being a Latina, but I'm also Afro-Latina. People are like, "What are you?" Like, I don't know. Like, do you speak Spanish? Like, that's crazy, you know? So microaggressions happen to me very often. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
It does. I mean, stories are often how we learn, right? And you gave us, thank you for sharing, you know, some solid examples. And you shared how you resolved it. I'm not quite sure how to resolve the curly hair thing, because it's the same thing when you're pregnant. People want to touch, like people feel that these things, a belly, your hair, it's like public domain, and it isn't. And I'm not, even I myself struggle. I'm not sure how we rectify that, because I think more often than not, people mean well. When people want to touch your belly, it's not because they want to hurt you. It's because, you know, babies make people excited. But so I myself don't know how to fully educate that ignorant person, but I appreciate what you said about going in to see your boss the next day and kind of confronting him about the situation. So I think, yes, absolutely, you answered the question, because you showed us a problem and how you resolved it. So thank you.
I do think though that, you know, as you grow older, you finesse things a little bit more and more. I was lucky that the person that went to touch my hair was, you know, a coworker friend of mine. So I was able to address it in a jokingly manner. But still, you know, these things happen, and we have to equip ourselves with how to address these issues as they rise.
Okay, thank you so much. So I want to get into a heavy topic, the Me Too movement. I know that when all of that was transpiring in Hollywood, some important data came out about who really was experiencing harassment at work. And it tended to be women in manufacturing, food industries, you know, cleaning industries. And many of those women tend to be women of color. And then depending what part of the country you're in, they tend to be Hispanic women. Like the people who clean my gym are Latinos. The people who clean my college are Latinos. The people who clean the mall, I see them are Latinos. And a lot of women in these food industries and service industries are experiencing, unjustly this whole, and then we don't have a political environment that is sensitive to what's going on behind closed doors where people feel disempowered. So I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about, the Me Too movement. I know I'm kind of running around. I assign these questions to certain women, but then as you guys talk about things, I'm thinking like, I'd like Patricia to speak a little bit about that because of the very nature of your nonprofit. And then we can kind of move around. If other women on the panel feel that they really want to respond to it, please feel free.
Sure. Yeah, one of our programs that we have is our Mujeres de Hace, which is our women's leadership program, running across 10 cities. And just recently, we had a town hall that was that we started off. We launched in Chicago, our home base, regarding this topic. And as a bipartisan organization, I think for us it was, and for me specifically, it was just an intention to say, hey, we want to provide a platform to have a conversation around all of the Me Too movement, but a lot of the issues that are going on. I think the Justice Kavanaugh was just nominated when we sent out the call to have the town hall conversation. But I think when we had the women gather, a lot of it was not only their own personal experiences that they had and being able to have a space to have a conversation and for us as an organization to show that we care, but it was also more so in terms of how do we empower the next generation of women coming into the workforce and ensure that we're providing a platform. I think, I don't know if you wanted a specific story or anything like that, but I think that it's important that we're having a conversation about it and that we're providing the spaces and the platforms to be able to talk about it.
Are we supporting each other enough as you see it in the work that you do?
I think you're starting to see that more than before, right? And I think that having the conversation is definitely the start to it. I think that there's definitely room for improvement. I mean, I think that sometimes even women are the first ones to say, oh, you're making that up. So I think that there's a huge need and opportunity to ensure that we're listening to women. And taking their experiences and what they have to say seriously.
Okay. Alina A., do you have any insights into this? I mean, I know you just said you switched jobs, but one of the reasons that you came to mind for this panel is because I've seen you kind of in this political, this quasi-municipal realm here in New York City, and I was wondering if you had any insight or anything you could share.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Me Too movement, for me personally, if it's done anything for me, is given me the confidence to say that certain things are not okay. Whereas before, especially in the political world, it being a very, I guess you could say, like old-fashioned, the way people operate. A lot of the men who are leaders in this world are much older, so they think that things that could fly before can still fly today. So it's given me the confidence because I know that the public view, and again, like politics is all about the public view and what people think about you, so the public view is in our favor. So I'll give you an example. Like I was being offered part of a business, but one of the partners, I realized after doing some research, had sexual assault allegations. And it was like in the Daily News, in the New York Post. And, when I brought it up, the excuse was kind of like, oh, that's just a smear campaign. You know, that was just somebody trying to destroy his name. I felt comfortable because of the Me Too movement to say, I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable doing this. And I just don't want my name to be associated with something like that, whether it's true or not. So I think it's good that it's given more women the confidence to speak their minds and not fear the repercussions as much.
Okay, thank you. This is, I'll let anyone who feels good answering this. So based on your experiences, what are some skills that are crucial today that may not have been as important 10 years ago, even 5 years ago? So maybe those of us in the 40s can answer this question about that. You know, but anyone who has some insight, because I know, for example, in technologies, things change like every 12 months, if not faster. So maybe Alina, if you can start, Alina Moran, are there any skills that we didn't necessarily need 10 years ago that really you see are very important when you're hiring?
So I think for me, when I was thinking about this question, the most important thing that I look for now, which I necessarily didn't look for like 10 or 15 years ago, is really someone that has good negotiation skills. Because I feel that in terms of any industry, that if someone really has the skill set where they're able to kind of manage and negotiate things, that's really a key component in terms of the skill that I'm looking for, because everything, and you know, it goes along with other things, but I feel like that and flexibility in terms of not being stuck with a particular job description or role, right? So before, everything was really related to your job description and kind of what those pieces were. And now I feel like having that flexibility and ability to negotiate, whether it's other kind of projects you want to work on or just the ability to kind of enhance who you are as a person, and really come to the table with that, is kind of the skills that I'm looking for now, especially in my management team, because I feel like that's key for us to be able to succeed, because healthcare is ever changing and dynamic, and if you're not flexible and you don't have good negotiation skills, then you're not going to do well in the industry.
Lily, what are you telling your young people about this? Like, what skills are they needing that maybe you didn't need to show or bring to the table?
Project management, right? So I think that, and truth be told, I think for a long time, I just got away with working really hard, and, you know, you just get stuff done, you get it done. Even if you don't sleep for a week, you get it done. And I would say over the past, especially 5 years, I've had to learn to be way more deliberate in how I sort of not just manage time, but manage priorities. And to Alina's point about negotiating commitments. But for young people, you know, we have to be a lot more prescriptive about what that means. Like, what's project management? So like teaching them how to use spreadsheets for things and deadlines, and sort of being a lot more deliberate about that, because Alina, to your point, the things are not cut and dry. You're not, you know, it's not widgets. Like, you're not doing this one thing every single day. What you do every day may shift, and you have to be able to flex to those requests and have the skills to be able to flex successfully.
Okay. Someone else wanted to say something. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that not so much a skill, but I see something that's being really valued now is grit. When all of the interviews that I've been on, or I always see that question come up, it's, do you have grit? Like, how do you prove, or how do you see someone's journey and someone's background and someone's struggle, and the way they've climbed to get to where they are at now. I think that that's very valuable now, whereas I would say 10 years ago, nobody really talked about that as much.
I think you're absolutely right. John Jay College is a Hispanic serving institution. And without going into too much what that means, you have to have at least 25% of students or more identifying as Latino or Hispanic to be considered that. And then you're eligible for extra points on grant applications, et cetera, et cetera. We have 42% of students who identify as Latinx, right? That's what we say on campus. And we talk a lot about resilience, and it's exactly what you're talking about, that our students, you know, their families may not know how to fill out a FAFSA application, but their fathers are fixing their cars so they could make it to campus. So there's all these little, it's not just about being able to provide their kids with money, but what other kind of skills and what other resources do their families have, and how does this relate to their grit and to their resilience to then graduate in 4 to 6 years. So absolutely, it's a concept we talk a lot about in higher ed. Does anybody else want to answer that?
I would just add empathy and compassion. I think, especially in today's workforce, I think things are moving at a much faster pace, and there's just so much going on in society today that folks are bringing this into the workplace. So how are we having that as a capability to ensure that your colleagues are okay, and that we're developing that as a skill set as well?
Yeah, empathy is hard if that's not part of if you're kind of like this tough kid from wherever. Sometimes that escapes you, but you're right. We have to try to be more sensitive and learn some of it if it's possible. I think it is, but
Emotional
empathy is very low on my strength scale. So I've been more cognizant of trying to be more empathetic. I'm very nice, but it doesn't always translate.
It sounds like something you're working on, Roseanne.
Yeah, it doesn't translate to empathy.
I'm in that boat too, so I'm not gonna.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So nice. Yeah, but empathy, you know. All right, so digression there. Somebody earlier mentioned something about a sponsor, and that's actually one of the questions I have. And again, we're coming close to the end, so whoever wants to respond is great. Do you have a mentor and/or a sponsor, or did you take necessary steps for your individual growth on your own? And I had Alina, Moran, and Lily, but then after them, anybody, if you have extra stuff to respond to, that would be great.
Yeah, so I think, so I definitely have both. And I feel that part of the reason why I am in the role that I'm in was due to my sponsor. She definitely was one that's, helped me to think about kind of where do you want to see yourself in 5 years, and what skills do you need to get there, and how can I help you get there in terms of meeting people, in terms of giving me access to certain projects within my organization. And so I definitely feel a debt of gratitude to her, even though I know that I worked hard and I definitely gave my all to the job, that she gave me the opportunity to do that interview and be able to show the capability that I had in that role. And so now in my organization and in organizations that I participate in, I definitely try to do a lot of mentorship, to do a lot of sponsorship, to speak to, especially to women and people of color, about the fact that you should see yourself here, or if, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And these are the skills that you need to get there. And how can I help you get there? And so I try to do that each and every day, not only with people at the hospital that I work in, but across our system, just because we're so large and I have the ability to serve in that role for others. And I think it's important because that's how I was able to get to where I am as well.
Okay. Lily?
I feel like I have a lot of mentors and a lot of sponsors. I think one of the things that I figured out was sort of how to make the request for what it was that I needed. I was really lucky to have a phenomenal leadership coach when I was a school principal. And so now, she coaches me for free. Like I just call him I need some coaching. And I think the most important role that she's played both when I was at the school and now is being that mirror for me, and being very honest with me when I'm getting in my own way. And that can look like a lot of different things. Lacking empathy may be one of those things. But, you get into these moments where you're in the spin cycle and you can't see the forest from the trees, and having someone who can like pull you back up. You know, there's a metaphor of the dance floor and the balcony. And so sometimes it's really hard to remember that you got to step on that balcony often to remember your broader purpose. And that's probably been the most important thing for me. Individuals who have helped guide me both personally and professionally is to get me out of the weeds.
Okay.
And I hope to do that for others.
Alina, do you have any insights? Alina A.
Yeah, I would say yes. I in my professional career, I'd say I probably don't have like one mentor who I look to, but definitely like the network of women in my life, especially like older women, my older cousins who, just in this process of switching careers helped me tremendously with things like negotiating salary. One is in human resources. I have hermanas, who are older, who are lawyers, and, helped me with, the nuances of like switching to a new career from such an informal office that I was in before. So definitely the network of women that I have helped me, and I'd say like motivated me and helped me believe that I can do everything that I set my mind to. I can have a career and all freelance. It's possible for women to do that. So I would say the network of women that I have is like my mentor.
I got you.
Yeah.
So Lisa, did you have, was it all on your own, that switch from Intel to Google, or even coming from the East Coast, right? Because you're from the East Coast, going over to California. Were there any sponsors involved in any of those big moves?
So now coming here, I guess my mentor was my boyfriend at the time, now husband. But I would say what I do have is a very strong board of directors. That's what I call my network of women and mentors and sponsors here. There's not that many Latina women in tech, but I think I found all of them in the Bay Area. So we all have a very strong circle and we really support each other. There wasn't per se one person that helped me come to Google. I can't say that, but I would say that throughout every single step of the process, I talked to many women and many people that have gone through the Google process, and they did help me all the way to the last stage. That's something that I did different from when I was interviewing at Intel to get into Intel. I think sometimes we forget that we want to do things by ourselves, but the reality is that there's so much knowledge out there. Like, for example, even coming into Google, different leveling systems that they have. Had I not spoken to someone else, I would have been stuck in a lower level. So I have a very strong network of women and men that support me.
Great, thank you. So this next question is about how you serve your community. And if you don't do anything outside of work to serve your community, it's okay. This is not a make you feel guilty question. This is more of a, if you have spare time and you do that, what are you doing? So I know, Julissa, you have a nonprofit organization, Listas, right? Mm-hmm. If you could talk a little bit about that. And the rest of you, if you have any kind of, are you on any boards, board of directors or board of trustees? Do you volunteer once a year or every Sunday, your church? Mm-hmm. I think service becomes a really important part of our resumes on some level. And I wanted to know if any of you have been able to squeeze some time in to do some of that volunteer work. This is for everyone. So we can, who's going to start talking? Sorry.
Oh, I was going to start.
Okay.
Let's get out of the way. No, so when I came into the Bay Area, I found myself wanting to give back since I already was in a more, technical role, etc. And I didn't know how to do that. But then I started thinking about who I was when I was 13, 14, 15 years old. And somebody that had no idea what an engineer was, had no idea about technical skills. I lived in Fordham Road in the Bronx. That's where I came from. My mom was a single mom. and we were very poor. So for me, not having the access to that information, I felt that had I had that access, maybe I would have done things a little bit different, even though things worked out well for me. So I found other women in the Bay Area that had similar experiences growing up, and we founded the organization in 2014. I moved here in 2011, by the way. And ever since then, we have a conference every year that's growing bigger and bigger. This year, we were able to host 400 young women from underserved communities here in the Bay Area. We have, people from different companies come in and teach different workshops. We also teach them about confidence, et cetera, et cetera. And at least exposed to
everyone what the acronym means.
Listas is Latinas in STEM to Achieve Success. And we believe in STEM, but STEM squared, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, but management. We want our girls not to only to be engineers, we want them to be CEOs and want them to run everything. But the main focus of our program is exposure. I just feel like a lot of these girls live where their backyard is Silicon Valley. Like imagine growing up 20 minutes from like the Googles, the Facebooks of the world and not having access to those companies. And then another thing we did was we started the mentorship program, which is a 6-month program. We pair each girl with a mentor, a Latina or professional mentor. And we also teach them how to code. So there's a lot of different skills that we're bringing in. We're working with a lot of districts in the area just to try to get more exposure. And we have a parent component to the program because we found that in the Latino culture, the biggest barrier is the parent, sadly. And until you don't get in there with the parent, you're not going to get the student to get what they need to succeed.
Thank you. Helena A?
Yeah, so I've actually found that I enjoy giving back through my skills. So like I have a few organizations that I volunteer for. Like I manage their social media, or I'll help if they have an event, get like press around their event. So one is called the Almas Women's Institute here in New York City, and actually the founder is a professor at Bronx Community College. And what the organization does is it emphasizes spirituality and the feminine, I guess you could call it divine feminine in women. And, it's centered around like mujerista and feminist ideals. And she just hosts different workshops, usually for free, for women of color who want to get more in touch with that side of them, that spiritual side. So that's something I'm passionate about, and I believe strongly in her work. So that's how I help her basically through pro bono work and how I have found that I'm able to give back.
Lily? Lily, do you want to respond? Or I'm just calling everybody out.
Oh, okay. That's a good question. So 2 years ago, I moved to Long Island, which sort of shifted my geographic capacity. And so I had to sort of discover what that means here on Long Island. And some of that has come through my daughter's school. Okay. To be frank, I haven't yet figured out how to cut the pie in a way where I feel like I'm really doing life in the way that I want to. But engaging in her school has been, I feel it's like the one small thing I can do consistently that doesn't feel like work. And some of that has actually come through helping them become a little bit more culturally competent in how they do things, including, celebrating different holidays and like helping them develop curriculum and like getting them resources that never how I imagined volunteering to look like, but it's actually, it both makes me feel good and I feel like that the school is yielding some benefit and my daughter's yielding some benefit too. So.
Patricia?
Yeah, I mean, I think I tell people all the time that I get to live my own personal mission and purpose through the work that I get paid for to do every day. I mean, of course, there's the tough part about leading a team, being really mainly responsible for the operation of the organization nationally. So I get to do that on a day-to-day basis, but also personally, I'm mentoring a young lady, and she's currently in her senior year of college. And so being able to really help her through from the beginning of her freshman year to her college year, all of her struggles, and being there as a mentor for her is something that I've done on my own time, but also through board leadership. I serve on the Latino Alumni Association for my alma mater at Indiana University, where I specifically focus on fundraising scholarship dollars to go back to Latino students to be able to ensure that not only are we getting them at the university, but ensuring that they're being supported to completion at the university. So for me, on a personal basis, I think being able to contribute financially in that capacity, but also help fundraise.
Well, it's interesting that you said about the board work, because I did the Mujeres de ACE inaugural class here in New York. And one of the learning outcomes hopes was that women could serve on boards. And I kid you not, the minute that the cohort was done, I was invited to be on a variety of boards. And so that was really interesting how that kind of just all, I actually recently had to quit one because I was on 3. And I was like, I can't, this is too much. Like, I was so excited to even be invited that I said yes to everybody. And I guess that's another panel discussion, right? How to say no to everybody. But I actually recently had to say, had to end my term there because I couldn't, it was just too much. And they needed too much, and they didn't, they needed more than I could give. So thank you, I said, for that. Alina?
So for me, I'm involved, very similar to Patricia. I feel that every day with the hospital work and the stuff that we do in East Harlem, that I'm always kind of doing community service or kind of working with patients in the communities in terms of the things that we're focusing on, whether that's, prevention of chronic disease, mental health awareness, focus on healthcare. I also participate in a few boards, one's related in my industry. So I work for the Association of Hispanic Healthcare Executives. I'm on the ACE Advisory Council. I also am on the Board of Trustees for New York Medical College. So I am trying to also, kind of balance between work and life. And I do a few kind of nonprofits in East Harlem just because I want to create an awareness and making sure that what we're doing from a healthcare perspective in our communities makes sense in the larger kind of social determinants of health. And so I participate in a lot of those discussions with the nonprofits that I'm a part of.
Okay. So I have one more question for all of you, because I don't see any questions on the chat, so I'm just going to keep going with my question. What's next? One of the things that I was thinking was, once you're the president and the CEO or the owner of, what do you do next? What is after this? You're all doing kind of these amazing things in your lives. Do you ever see yourself retiring from these opportunities? Do you see yourself just continuing to grow? Do you have a sense of what's next? I know that's a loaded question. And I always say that if the answer is, I don't know, that's equally valid, right? Because we don't have a crystal ball. We might want to have more babies. We might want to wait till our babies go to high school, whatever the case might be. We might want to have a baby. So let's see, we'll start with Lily. Hey! You don't know what's next?
Listen, I'm just trying to make it through tomorrow. So I think one idea that I've been wrapping my head around is breaking out of this mental model that careers have to look a certain way. Listen, I was raised very much you just keep pushing and you keep looking for that next thing and that next thing. And that's exhausting. And so I have no idea what's next. I'm trying to get as good as I possibly can at the job that I currently have, but I'm also looking to, when it's time to make that call, just be really open to whatever is next and sort of position myself that, you know, if there's a pay cut that comes, so be it, but doing something that's meaningful is most important.
Patricia, you want to go next?
Sure. I think it's important to have an idea, to have a plan. To Lily's point, it's important to be flexible and to be open to what presents itself at your desk, right? And I think for me, I'm looking forward to the holidays because it's usually the time that I get some quiet time to be able to kind of reflect on the past year, the goals that I've been able to accomplish, but also really plan for the coming year. And I'm a big vision board. I believe in vision boards, so I like to craft out some time to work on that. But I've been with Office since 2010, but as president and CEO for the last 3.5 years. And my first strategic plan that was built for 2015 to 2020 will be met by the end of this year. And so we're ahead of schedule. And I think that we're still, you know, for me as a leader for the organization, scratching the surface. And so I'm excited to start planning for what the next year looks like. But I have entrepreneurial ideas, and I'm also long-term, I would wish to be in a position where I can contribute financially to those that I want to be, not only nonprofits and efforts that I truly believe in, but also for elected officials that I want to support, and women in particular, to really get behind them in that way long-term. So I don't know to answer your question, but I have been.
Well, it sounds like you have a plan.
Ready.
A?
I mean, now that I switched positions, my work-life balance is much better.
Okay.
So I really want to focus on diversifying my income, you know, and working on the consulting side of my career, especially living in New York City as, you know, a young adult. It's difficult. It's much harder to own property, to, you know, be where my parents made it at this age, just because of, you know, we're saddled with student loans, and, you know, it's just not affordable and difficult for people to make it here in New York City. So I really want to focus next on having multiple streams of income and, you know, working on that consulting work.
Did you say my name? Oh.
Yes.
So I just finished paying off my student loans.
Okay.
Yay! This was literally like yesterday, so this is very exciting.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Thank you. It was a big deal. It was a lot. But my goal is to do a lot of healing in the coming year, and to focus on getting myself ready to be a mom, hopefully. And I've been doing that. The reason why I came to Google is because of the maternity leave, and how great they are with maternity leave, and just being a mom in tech. The environment has opened up for me to be able to do that and not have to put my career to the side. So I'm welcoming the idea of possibly having a baby in the future, not now. That's where I'm at.
Tomorrow is the future, you know.
Yeah. I'm not ready yet. I gotta get ready, you know. But it's coming.
Well, good luck to you. I hope you know. Alina M, what's next?
So for me, I basically am looking to probably move to another part of the country. I'm sorry?
Hace 20.
20, yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're probably in like 2 years, I think we're gonna be looking to go somewhere else. So I'm gonna kind of stay in my current role. I actually got I'm doing 2 roles now in the organization, so I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But we're really looking to like go to another part of the country, experience something different. My husband and I both grew up in New York, and we want to think about like, what do we want to do in retirement, right? And we want to experience something else. And so when I did that, I actually want to do something not CEO related. I just want to be part of an organization and just relax and chill and experience another part of the US. So that's kind of what the future holds in the next few years.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is flexibility, right? After you've been in a career for a minute, you need flexibility. So whatever is next has to include that is kind of like the theme. Either flexibility in what the job has to offer, or from you yourselves, flexibility in what's next. Like the way Lily was talking about, we have this rigid idea of what a career path is supposed to look like. And higher ed is the perfect example of that. You're supposed to start off as a coordinator, then you're an assistant director, then you're an associate director, then you're a director, and then you're a senior director. I mean, it is exhausting, as you said. And so I'm hearing that we have to be flexible, whether we're in our 20s or in our 40s. The flexibility becomes really important because our family dynamics change. Even if those of us who don't have children, we have families, we have parents who are getting older who we may have to take responsibility for at some point. So at this point, if you have any closing remarks, they are welcomed. I'm not seeing any questions on the chat because you guys are doing such a great job that people don't feel they have any questions. But I would love for you to all have some closing words, whatever you think people should hear about leadership in the workplace, being a woman in the workplace, whatever you want, whatever your closing remarks are, you're free. So
I'll go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Elise.
So what I always kind of I guess my words of advice to folks in leadership opportunities is always to look for opportunities. So whether that's, joining some committee at work, doing work at a nonprofit, but just kind of aspiring to something different, because you never know whether something that you volunteer for or something that you become a part at work is going to lead you to a different path and maybe to a different career. And so that would be the words of advice that I would give to hermanas that are younger is, whether you're in school or whether you're starting your first job, just volunteer for different opportunities. Don't be scared to raise your hand and say, I want to work on that particular project, even if it's something that you don't know anything about, because that might be a way to kind of develop relationships with people or do something outside of your comfort zone that eventually will lead you to your next step in life.
Okay. Alina A?
I would say that the imposter syndrome is very real. So to any woman listening, I've been in rooms and I've thought, why am I here? Like I don't feel like I deserve to be there, but you do, even if you don't think that you do. So the sooner you can gain that confidence and realize that your employer needs you more than you need them, I think the better off you'll be in your career and the more willing you'll be to take risks. So that would be my bit of advice.
Thank you. Jaleesa?
I would say beware of destination addiction. And by that, I mean, sometimes we're so focused on the next thing and the next step that we don't embrace what's going on in the current. And that happens to me all the time. And also, just give yourself a little pat on the back. Like the other day, I'm like, oh my God, I mean, my friend is a VP here and I'm this and I'm that, and I haven't gotten anywhere. And then I start thinking like, dude, you're 32 years old and this is where you've been. This is where you've gotten. So I think let's celebrate like the small milestones, but also just try to embrace the current space you're in before, forcing yourself to the next launch. That's it.
Patricia?
I love what everybody has said already. I think, one of the derailments from meeting our own professional and personal goals is loss of focus on a day-to-day basis. So one of the resources I love to share with folks is one of my favorite books called The One Goal, and it's by Gary Kelly, and it talks about that, let's say that 5-year goal that you have and how it's necessary that you break it down to an annual milestone. Then you break it down even further to what is it that you need to accomplish on a monthly basis to a daily basis, whether it's, spending 10 minutes to think on your entrepreneurial ideas, whether it's spending 15 minutes to read on a specific subject matter area. What are you doing every day to ensure that you're meeting that longer term goal? And it doesn't seem like a lot, but it surely does add up. And then before you know it, you've accomplished or you've met that milestone that you've set for yourself. So I think making sure that you're taking time, and The One Goal is a good read to do that. And then to Julisa's point, I think we need to stop comparing ourselves to everyone else. I think I hear a lot of people saying, I'm such and such age and I haven't got to this, so look at this other person. I think it's important. I really agree with that, Julisa, to embrace where we are, because you never know. You're in a certain experience in a moment for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Lily?
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's good advice. I think the only thing I would add is really figuring out what the voice inside is telling you and learning to distinguish like fear of what makes you uncomfortable from this really is not for you, or like this really is not a good fit. Because sometimes those two voices tend to blend. And really figuring out what distinguishes those two in different situations, I've found to be really, really important.
Thank you. So I would like to make a couple of announcements if you'll humor me for a minute. So, next Saturday at 8:00, the Board of Trustees is going to be at the Sugar Factory on the west side on Broadway over by 68th Street. And we're inviting, I've been calling it a hangout, but it's really like happy hour. I don't know if we're allowed to use terminology, but anyway, anyone who wants to come out to hang out with the BOT next Saturday who's local, unfortunately this is a local in-person event. We're going to be at the Sugar Factory that has the most amazing drinks and dessert. And it's just to hang out, get to know one another. We've decided that we're going to focus on the alumni aspect of the strategic plan, particularly the over 35 set. Not to say that other alumni are not we do have some events coming up for them, but so that's one event. The next event that I think I hope people will come to is in January. We're co-sponsoring with Blacklisted, which is the performance team. We're going to have a strolling workout workshop for hermanas over 35. So no contortions, no flips, no trying to get all the way to the bottom of the floor. It's going to be, a workshop, a stroll workshop.
Like a silver sneaker stroll workshop.
Silver sneakers for hermanas. Yes, I like that. But that's going to be, I believe, January 19th at a studio in Union Square. With Omega Psi Phi's Bronx and Harlem alumni chapter. We're going to be doing an MLK Day community service. And then after the community service, we're going to a restaurant in Harlem to have a book drive and brunch. And then last but not least, I want to do another one of these in March with some of the women who responded yes after U5. So I want to take that and do a part 2 in March for Women's History Month. So stay tuned for all of that. I am grateful to know all of you and that you all said yes to me. So thank you. Once again, this was recorded and I'm going to post it on OrgSync for anyone who missed it. And, hasta la muerte, thank you. You guys are awesome. And I feel so privileged to have you in my Rolodex. I just aged myself, but it's nice that, I have friends and manas, partners in all of this with all of you. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful holiday season. And I hope to see you at one of these many events.
Thank you.
You too. And thank you, Roseanne, for putting this together.
Of course. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Julisa, get to work. Light some candles.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.